Did Toto Wolff just roll over and admit Red Bull are better than them? Because it very much looks like that. But then again, this could easily be one of F1's oldest tricks in the book. Based on what happened yesterday, you'd think Red Bull just humbled Mercedes, right? I know it sounds vapid because, hey, it's just testing, bro. When lap times go to lie. Shirt's still available, by the way, but only for one more week. But this particular instance hits slightly different. Not because Max Verstappen got the best time or anything like that, well no, Lando Norris got that in the evening. I'm talking about all of the other stuff that Toto said in regards to the way Verstappen conducted himself with his brand new toy, the Red Bull Ford Powertrain. And this hit, to me, like a freaking bus after weeks of stoic imperiousness from Toto Wolff, fighting his corner, and now we're on the verge of him basically saying, what's the point of fighting? It looks like we're screwed anyways. And if you're new to Formula One, first of all, I welcome you. But also, in F1 testing, there are two arms races going on at once. The first one is the obvious one, getting your car around the track and figuring out whether it's good or not. And then also the other one is to do with the stuff inside your head. Teams can also hide stuff through stories, and everyone in this argument has incentives going on around here, and nobody is saying anything by accident. After a solid shakedown running early in Barcelona, Bahrain was the first real public performance window where we could actually see proper live data and cars on the telly, albeit for only an hour, with Andrew Shoblin even saying they cleared so many basics in Spain, they could actually just focus mostly on performance and secure. Yet we're only past the first day, and an early long-run comparison had them publicly conceding Red Bull might be the benchmark, or so it would seem. Because Toto Wolff's claims, they were really, really blunt. So here they are now for your consideration, and yes, I will do the voice. They are able to deploy far more energy on the straights than everybody else. I mean, I'm speaking a second per lap over consecutive laps. On a single lap, we have seen it before, but now we have seen it on 10 consecutive laps with the same kind of straight line deployment. I would say that as per today, on the first official day of testing, which is always with the caveat to that, they've set the benchmark. I was hoping that they were worse than they are because they've done a very good job. The car, the power unit, and the benchmark at the moment, I would say. And then obviously you have Max in the car. I mean, that combination is strong. Yeah, I'm not buying it, Toto. Well, I mean, except the Max part. After months of saying, we're going to be great, and now they're going, oh no, we're not great, it's over now. Because plenty of other people out there, including the ones in your feed, have all pointed to the same conclusion. This is all mind games. And that is true, because Toto Wolff is a natural when it comes to weaponizing the narrative and trying to skew it in a direction, and then he goes off and does something else. But this time, it's a little bit more specific. He could have just said Red Bull were fast and leave it at that, and then we wouldn't have believed him at all. But what he chose to talk about here is harder to fake, because fuel loads can't easily hide how the speed builds at the end of the straight when two cars are on comparable programs. Even if you never learn the exact truth, you can still learn what the paddock is reacting to. We're watching right here, people, the first clear public tell of what this year will reward. As I've made clear on this channel for quite a few videos now, it's all about the management of engine and battery. And the coverage that we've been getting and all of the stuff that Formula One has been shoveling down our throats has been a means to try and educate us all. And there has been naturally a lot of resistance because there are many drivers saying it takes the joy out of the sport, where there are other drivers saying this is absolutely fantastic and they're thriving in this environment. The younger ones especially. And then Lewis likening it to GP2 cars. I mean, first of all, Lewis, it's called Formula 2. Shows how out of touch you might be with the young ones. And also, actually, you're already in the 1 minute 34s, and I think the pole time for Formula 2 last year was 1 minute 44. I think you are wrong, sir. But what I'm trying to say is that we'll get used to it. It'll just take a little bit while, and the drivers will probably get used to it too. And some drivers will be more honest about it than others, like Lewis. In that world, the straight will be the place where your energy management story will be dictated and become very visible whether you like it or not. Because when your car can accelerate hard into the straight late over and over and over again, Toto claiming he saw this over the course of 10 laps, then it tells you one of two things. Either they have an advantage in the energy loop, or they're trying to show it off on day one for a reason, to try and unsettle the paddock. There is a fair argument to suggest that Red Bull might have shown their hand already. But then there's also the argument to say that it might not be as simple as saying, oh, well, Red Bull have the best engine then. Not necessarily, but they might have the best when it comes to an energy ecosystem, as in the entire unit. And Max Verstappen right now, he's playing with it. That ecosystem can be low drag when you want it to be. It has the ability to harvest energy under braking well that doesn't make it jiggle maniacally. It's electrical efficiency, so the system stays aggressive throughout a stint. It may also mean the software is working well, so that combustion and electric delivery doesn't feel jerky. It's trustworthy. Everything works together. An active error is part of the system too, because if you have a really good low drag mode, as in the flap at the back and the front actually plays well into your system, it means you don't necessarily have to use as much power to maintain a top speed. And we saw through the speed traps, that car, the Red Bull, the RB22, is at the absolute peak of those speed traps. So it just means you might have a little bit more reserve in your battery, and that's partly what Toto's been saying. It just seems like that car can just keep on deploying as long as they want to, or they feel like it. And there's also thermals to consider here too. I mean, don't expect the batteries to just suddenly explode here. You seriously think Formula One teams would let that happen? They are not that naive. Batteries have been around Formula One in this capacity in providing an extra oomph for several years now. If you got to a point where it was about to overheat or they ran out of power, you just get turtle mode. That thing you get in your EV car. You go limp home mode. What I'm trying to say is that there are plenty of safeguards. And what Max Verstappen demonstrated to many is that Red Bull 4 Powertrains has actually got something good under the hood. And that the way they package it is something that is really, really impressive. And I saw that via the expert Craig Scarborough when he took a gander at what the power unit looked like, and he had an absolute fit over it, in a good way. Talking about the cooling and the packaging of the intercooler. He really looked at that in an interesting way, how it was all packaged internally. How was this all possible, he was wondering, because that intercooler is not exactly light. And then there's the way Max managed the gears, because trackside observers noticed Verstappen downshifting in a weird way. In a way that helps the car charge the battery, effectively, turning the gearbox and engine speed behaviour into part of the harvesting plan. All perfectly legal, by the way. In fact, that little infographic we saw during the testing coverage that we actually got said that you can accrue more battery power under braking. Well, what Red Bull demonstrated here with Max at the wheel is that they found a way to make it work without overloading the system or making the car just... A clear example of what I've been trying to say the last few videos is that it's all going to be about dance choreography, and that the dance for 2026 will be slightly different, but a dance that has been running for quite a few decades. There have been many elements of electric power or turbo power or other facets of the car that a driver has to manage. It's not the case of the old days where you had a steering wheel, a loud pedal, a quiet pedal, and then maybe a gear stick. It's become way more complex than that over the course of multiple generations. And Red Bull and Ford have been able to obviously build a powertrain that doesn't find itself stressed with the way that Max is manhandling that car. It just goes back to Mark Rushbrook's comment from a couple of months ago, where they've got the reliability down pat to a point where they're satisfied, and now it's a case of just getting the drivability down, making this power unit and the powertrain work in a way that the drivers will be really happy with. And so far, I've not really heard any of the Red Bull Group drivers complaining or feeling like there's something left on the table. And Max having fun like this and finding this little hack leaving people really befuddled, that's just one example already. This ecosystem is comfortable enough for Max to just whip it out all of the time and leave people baffled. In short, the car isn't fragile. Because if it were, then experimentation like that, what Max was playing, would not have been recommended because, well, it's only day one of testing. You don't want to just completely buff out the car and then leave it completely compromised for an entire day's worth of testing. I know you're going to be bringing up the fact that they weren't out for the first couple of hours of testing on day 2, but come on, they got 136 laps on the board. The most out of any single individual driver, Williams only having 9 laps more. That is a really reliable car, so better be safe than sorry. So no, I don't buy into the flattery that Toto is bestowing upon this team. It's all gamesmanship, it's politicking, but it's something that does have at least a little bit of substance, and he has some actual evidence to back it up. Which brings us to the other thing going on at the same time, the whole thing about the engine compression ratio war, something that we've been really dragging out for the last couple of months, and it might be reaching a crescendo where Mercedes might actually lose. They are very much looking at the barrel of a loaded gun and realizing, yeah, the jig is up. Because thanks to the events of day 1 of pre-season testing in Bahrain, we might now have the next chapter, or maybe the final chapter. If you haven't watched those videos and you're not familiar, the controversy at play here is that rivals suspect Mercedes exploiting a loophole involving how components behave at operating temperatures within the engine, the combustible one, and how the FIA measures said temperatures. Toto's public stance has been consistent, but become more aggressive in recent times. According to them, the FIA has said everything is fine, and that the performance gain they've actually been getting is quite small, maybe just a few horsepower, and that rivals have been lobbying hard with private letters and meetings to try and derail their efforts to prevent a potential domination era, and pressure the FIA into action. And Toto actually then upping the ante even more, saying if there is some sort of late action which means that the Mercedes engine might be limited in some way, it would leave them and their 3 customer teams royally and utterly screwed. But clearly, Wolff's approach has not been working, because all that he has been doing and all that he's been gesticulating has basically just put the spotlight on him and his team even more. So the best thing to do right now? Change the subject. Talk about, Red Bull. Oh, they look great. Oh, we're not looking so great ourselves. I mean, look at what's happening in Bahrain. We're not having a good time of it. No, no, no. And as of the start of day 2, they are running into some power unit issues. So put simply, what Toto's trying to do here is change the definition of what actually is reality here. So painting this subject in the way it is right now means that what we're talking about is on-track behaviour after a couple of months of nothing but basic news headlines and stuff that we've heard from rumours. And us F1 fans, we very much love seeing on-track actions because it's something that is tangible, because we can see that. Then he adds a sneakier move, signalling confidence by saying he won't take legal action if the FIA changes how checks are done, going against previous suggestions Mercedes might sue. That reads like composure. But it also tells you how late in the game this has all come. Right now, everyone's staring hard at deadlines and designs that can't be rebuilt without the need for massive amounts of flex tape. A lot of damage. This isn't like the Braun GP double diffuser. That's an aerodynamic part that, in theory, can be changed with a few tweaks over a few weeks and then can be implemented into a brand new car within a couple of months. This, though, to do with the power unit, it's all locked in right now. It's baked in. To change it would waste countless resources and time, and may not even be feasible. There might have to be other compromises met, which completely nobbles a potential power unit for them and customers. This will affect a huge swathe of the grid. 8 drivers will be compromised here. Mercedes fearing that they might fall behind if they have to do some kind of change, instead of having to just wait until 2027 when there can be just another reset. And after years of having fallen behind, for this to happen right now, at the cusp of them realizing that they might actually have a good car here, it's gonna sting really, really bad. And it's also gonna derail any hopes of getting Max Verstappen on board. So naturally he pivots to the way that Max has been able to deploy the power in his car, because he wants the engine argument to feel like noise while the energy argument feels like the actual story, which I believe it is. Narrative control in motion. It also has a practical effect. It makes rivals burn emotional energy fighting a political battle which they might think they can win, whilst Mercedes might decide to focus on other elements in the background. And it's led to them actually finding out some issues that they do have with the car. Yes, balance issues through high temperature conditions. I guess that gremlin from the W15 and 16 hasn't been purged from the system now, has it? But it makes Wolff's claims all the more believable on the surface, because what they've demonstrated on day 1 at the beginning of day 2 is that, no, the W17 isn't perfect. It is fallible. It has its issues. We are just like everyone else. We are not special. We are not going to dominate. So get off our backs, okay? If you do this, then we will have no hope of even being competitive. Another smokescreen. Trying to remind us all that, hey, Red Bull right now, they've really been exceeding expectations, and whilst they may not like it, it's come as a welcome distraction. Energy management is key here. That's exactly what Haas's Aya Komatsu said, it's what Williams' Matt Harmon has said, and Red Bull right now are simply demonstrating with Max's right foot. And what helps Toto's argument is that they've got Zak Brown praising Red Bull as well. And Zak Brown praising Red Bull? Well, that'll be the day. I bet he would have said that through gritted teeth. And indeed, the quote reads just that, according to the Dutch publication Formula1.nl. The McLaren Racing CEO saying he was surprised by the strength of the new Red Bull Ford power unit after Barcelona, yet he would rather not see them that competitive. That's quite telling, because Brown gains nothing from hyping a rival unless he thinks the rival is genuinely going to be a problem, or he's trying to psychologically prepare his own team for what's to come, which would lean into what Andrea Stella has been telling McLaren in treating every single new season as a blank slate, as in assuming nothing. And the other form of evidence here is quite boring, because again, Verstappen had a big lap count to his name on day 1 whilst doing all of this, 136. And a team that can run all day and still show a repeatable straight line behaviour is rarely doing it by accident. usually with intent. So naturally, Toto's comments will easily fuel that foam for thought. It provides a welcome cover for what's going on, and the prospect of Toto realizing he's fighting a losing battle. He needs to buy himself some time, or at least puts the onus on another team. And there is a human element to all of this, because even though Racing Bulls had a less than good time of it with only 75 laps under their belt with Arvid Lindblad at the wheel, the fact that Red Bull 4 Powertrains is able to do any of this demonstration of competence at all is a huge achievement. Because that power unit only exists because Red Bull were tired of being a customer who could get stranded by supplier politics. Renault dropping the ball at the start of the turbo hybrid era thanks to chronic underinvestment, and then Honda pressing the eject button only to then walk it back. Sure, that partnership with Honda found success for 4 seasons in a row, but that whole moment with Christian and even Max, that must have made them think twice about trusting them wholly. So when it came to the matter of maybe we should make our own engines, Christian rolled up his sleeve, went to Dietrich Mateschitz and said, you know what, let's give it a go. Thusly, Red Bull 4 Powertrains became part of their identity because the clue is in the name, Red Bull Powertrains. They didn't call it something else. No, they went with their name lock, stock and barrel and bet their farm with their own reputation, as well as seeking independence. So if the first public read, the first truly public read, I'm not talking about the shakedown here because we really weren't supposed to see that, is that they could potentially be the benchmark, even if it's a case of blowing smoke up Red Bull's arse, then that tells you most of what you need to know. That there might be a bigger story here, that it might be the team who best adapted to the era of electrification of Formula One, and that Red Bull treated it as something that was a serious venture and they managed to solve a problem relatively early and allowed Max to get jiggy with it in a way the car didn't actually act jiggly. A strong energy ecosystem, and if that's true, the early pecking order might be turned on its head completely, which is why I've not pumped out my predictions for the season just yet. Because for years, teams that didn't necessarily have a great power unit could have made up for it for having good aero gains. This year, it might be the completely other way around, in that, yeah, you might have really good aero, but if your energy management is absolutely terrible, or you really can't extract the full potential of it, then you're left relatively stuck, and it might lead to a situation where Aston Martin's first Adrian Newey designed car might not be all that. It might be the case of the Red Bull RB3, where the design looked absolutely lush and it had potential, but it was hamstrung by other elements, such as, well, Red Bull's infrastructure was not up to snuff yet at that time. And then also, the power unit was not exactly the best either. There were other elements at play which did compromise Adrian's design. And Max's downshift no jutsu might be an example that, hey, the Red Bull Ford Powertrains division might actually be seriously competent, that they can pull off this kind of stunt already, and Max can feel frisky with it. And I bet Christian right now is chuckling to himself and sipping a scotch going, see that, Dietrich? I knew it was the right thing to do. And this does bring the conversation toward Aston Martin. Could their commitment to Adrian Newey-style aero being the forefront of their campaign be the wrong move at this time? Maybe, but not because aero stopped being a thing or being important. It'll always be important. But maybe Aston looked at that aspect of the car a little bit too early, the wrong area first. Because a team can build a beautiful cornering platform and still get hunted on the straights if it doesn't have the energy to back it up, or if it overheats itself into oblivion, because Aston Martin did get on the blower to us via Mike Crack that, yes, for day 2, they will have changed the engine already, and they had cooling vents up the wazoo, and that engine still overheated then? And I recall seeing a stat where in terms of RPMs reach, Stroll's car was some 2,000 lower than what Verstappen was able to achieve in the same conditions. And then the AMR26 can only muster 36 laps to Verstappen's 136, after running into an issue in the afternoon. And then its top speed, some 40 kilometers an hour slower than the Red Bull. Oh dear, the hype around this AMR26 is starting to slip a little bit, now we actually have some live telemetry to back it up. And I know that Fernando Alonso is out there right now, he is able to turn the engine up a little bit more. But that start was not ideal, and it did sort of mirror what we saw on day 1 of the Barcelona shakedown for them. That Honda engine is not playing ball with the overall situation with the car. Sure enough, the livery does look gorgeous on the actual car, but it might be just that. Maybe that packaging was a little bit too tight, because that car, well, it baked its first engine. It might be really clever in the corners, but if it can't get up to speed and maximize it and be able to manage it in said corners, the revving and the gear changes and what have you, then what good is it? Because that's why Toto's quotes was really fascinating here. He wasn't talking about pure pace or the way the car looked or the bodywork or anything like that. He was talking about the car's behavior, the way it acted, and that is a little bit harder to mask. And yes, you could bring up the topic of sandbagging, but I think the way that you sandbag might be a little bit differently defined, in that it might be about the way you hide your energy reserves, as in you don't just pour out the whole taps instantly, you just leave something a little bit to spare. Be like that bunny, just go on and on and on and on. Which is funny because, Williams is sponsored by Duracell. At this point, Energizer should get on the blow to Red Bull. Because this kind of sandbagging could mean a team look ordinary on lap time while proving to itself that its energy loop is rock solid and can just keep plodding along without issue. It means that gives them setup and strategy flexibility. Another team can maybe look scary on a straight because it's probably stress testing deployment early. The timing screen can't tell you which one is the real monster at play here. The traces can, though, which is why Toto talking about deployment is such a big reveal. Perhaps maybe with Max they were absolutely revving that engine to oblivion to try and see whether it would hold, and sure enough, it did. There weren't really any complications for Max on day one. It was far more comfortable than it was in 2025, and yes, I know, that RB22 did have a delayed start to day 2 before Hadjar got out, but the fact is, though, is that they had the capacity to really run it ragged instead of going in softly. And hey, Mercedes have run into their own set of problems too. Nobody is safe in this world. But given what Red Bull were able to do, they can afford to play it that little bit more safely. Better to do that than just go in there all guns blazing, find a really big problem which damages other aspects of the car. In fact, they said the instances and the issues were routine, and then if they decided to just rush out, it might have made the situation worse. So who knows, maybe their ceiling is even higher than what we saw in day 1. Maybe that was the absolute limit. That was it. We do not know just yet, which is why lap times are not relevant. In that sense, it is just testing, bro. And then just look to the drivers and what they're saying about the new platform now they're actually testing it properly with a little bit performance on the tap. That'll tell you which drivers will sink or swim, and right now, Lewis Hamilton has really pivoted. He did say it was fun back in Barcelona, but in the situation where the circuit is much hotter and it's not like the circuit to Catalonia, it has the infamous turn 10 in terms of braking zones, Lewis doesn't like the car anymore. He is genuinely struggling, and there is a little bit left on the table for the Ferrari. And he also called the cars complex and that you need to have multiple university degrees to try and handle it. A different tune to a different track. And then you look to what Kimi Antonelli was saying, in that he likens Formula 1 these days to speed chess, as in he gets a little bit of a kick out of it in trying to manage everything at the same time. So I really do think Kimi will thrive in these particular circumstances and these regulations. This definitely sounds like his jam. All of this just tells you how much mental bandwidth this era will demand on the drivers, and it might give you an indication as to whether or not drivers may decide just to call it a day. So what should people take from the opening action of Bahrain testing? Well, treat lap counts and sustained straight-line deployments as higher quality signals than just the lap times. Just ignore those. See how the drivers look in the cars, if they're skittish or if they're planted. There's no porpoising to fall back on anymore either, because the floor doesn't really play a big part in how the car goes. Then treat Toto's press posture as part of the competitive environment, because, well, it is. He's trying to turn the engine controversy into a nothing burger, labelling it as lobbying, while pushing the world toward trackside evidence that fits the new era. All the while, he's pointing to the other team, Red Bull, and saying, hey, that's where the hockey puck is actually going, people. Don't focus on us entirely. To take heat off of his own team, because the Mercedes right now doesn't look as dominant as it did at the Barcelona shakedown. I mean, don't get me wrong, Mercedes does still look capable of winning races and going for a title campaign. I mean, you could easily say the same thing about Ferrari once they've got their car dialed in. It certainly looks quite a reliable machine, the power unit looks good, the car just needs a little bit of tweaking. And who knows, someone might show up to the plate by the time we get to the European leg of the season and utterly dominate. Honda might get its act together again and provide something really good with an extra patch that is afforded to them by, I think, the ADUO. I can't remember the full name, but it's something that is officially offered to power unit suppliers from F1 and the FIA. But the first impression we got on day 1 was brutally clear. Wolff is fighting an information war, whilst Red Bull is busy just showing us all that the first battle regarding the energy war, well, they've won it. And your next battle is to drag your pointer of choice over to this video over here and click on it, because this video I know you will like. I'll see you over there.